Wamai, greetings, kia orana, and welcome viewers. I'm your host Sheppard and welcome back to Development and Advocacy, a panorama of images capturing you and the world around us. Now, alas, New Zealand, we lost the Netball World Championships, but there is hope on the horizon. Even though the Black Caps are getting drubbed in South Africa, New Zealand, or well, Team New Zealand is all ready and set to go for the 2009 America's Cup Challenge. So that is some good news, and maybe we may be able to salvage some hope. Anyways, moving in today's show. Today we're interviewing Mike Sheppard, Ethnic Communities Ambassador to World Vision. Now, Mike Sheppard today will talk about advocacy issues and the charity changes, as well as tackling the issue of poverty and injustice towards all the impoverished children in New Zealand. Now viewers, it's an issue that we always look at and saying that we can't do much about it, but collectively as a nation, I'm sure there is something we can do about it. So on that note, let's cross over to Mike Sheppard and his kind words.
World Vision is a Christian humanitarian organisation dedicated to working with children, families and communities to overcome poverty and injustice. World Vision serves all people, regardless of religion, race, ethnicity or gender. World Vision New Zealand currently supports more than 70 projects in more than 25 countries. World Vision works in 3 different areas: emergency relief, community development, and advocacy. World Vision helps transform the lives of children and families in need around the world, without regard to religious beliefs, gender, race, or ethnic background. It gives an opportunity to every New Zealand household to be involved in a child-focused work that touches millions of people each year in its quest to end poverty, fight hunger, and transform lives. Michael Sheppard's appointment as an Ethnic Communities Ambassador is a unique position. Michael's core activities include the areas of advocacy and project development.
World Vision is one of the leading charities in the world, and charity is an all-embracing word, but I think when we look at World Vision, we think of child sponsorship, and New Zealand has one of the greatest child sponsorship per head of population in the world. Kiwis sponsor 84,000 plus children out of New Zealand, which is incredible. Some companies sponsor 20, 30 children, one for each of their employees. Some individuals sponsor 5 or 6 children, and a huge amount of Kiwis sponsor one child who they correspond with. So it's about changing lives by changing children's lives. So that's what World Vision does in the main concept. But the other area is project development. The old story about give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, give him a fishing rod, you'll feed him for a lifetime. So we want to go beyond child sponsorship to project development, which will sponsor whole communities. So both things are running at the same time, but it's very important that we do that. And the other area for World Vision is advocacy, which I'll expand upon a little bit later.
Like you were mentioning, 84,000 children are sponsored by New Zealand as a whole.
Yes.
What exactly is the core of your activities?
Right. The individual child interacts with the sponsor, but the money from the donor goes to the individual community project. So let's say there's a project in Tanzania where we have quite a large number of them. So the community, in correlation with the World Vision people, will determine that this area needs water and they can't dig the boreholes because they're too deep. So the funds will be raised for that, and they will then present X number of children to be individually sponsored. So the money from the individual child sponsorship will go towards the community project, which could take 15 years. And some sponsors dialogue with their children right to the university level. They interact with them and even leave in their will that when they pass away, they still want that child to be sponsored. So there's a huge attachment to the children, and the children all benefit because of the project development in their individual communities. Beyond that, and something which really deeply touches my heart, is the child labor bondage area. And there's areas in the world where children, because the parents are so poor, they actually put their children into factories to raise money. And a child will work 16, 17 hours a day. We've seen that with major clothing companies for a pittance, and they can never pay themselves out of there. So World Vision is a project going on in Chennai in India, where the children will be actually bought out of bondage, and the parents will have to agree that they will never put them back in there again, so it's monitored. And that's been so successful that the native community has taken over the whole project themselves. We just oversee it now, but they've had such a heart for it that they can see they can change people's lives and get children out of that terrible, terrible environment, that the community itself has taken it over. So that's very, very good.
But you must also be aware of the fact that India has one of the world's highest child laborers. How does your organization cater to the needs of the children? Do you also get your organization involved in bringing to light the situation, the turmoils of the children to the respective governments out there?
It's very much a part of education as well. You could, in 1,000 years, just keep putting money towards it, but with such a massive population and such poverty, the only long-term solution will be project community development and the eventual growth of the general overall economy, which is happening in India, of course. But you can't solve it just by pulling children out of child, which is so important. You've got to deal with the root cause, which is inherent poverty, which is lack of education, infrastructure, lack of infrastructure. So again, it is so important that the child sponsorship and the thing we call Children in Crisis, which is donations specifically towards that area, continue, so we can over time develop and move towards community development rather than the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. You have to have the ambulance there, because I can't bear to think of even one child shoving matches in matchboxes for 16 hours a day. It just breaks my heart. But we know we can only deal with it through community development.
Several communities, several ethnicities around New Zealand have welcomed your appointment as a new ethnic ambassador. Tell us a bit about your role. What kind of activities?
I think it's almost unique in the world having an ambassador from a major charity to the overall ethnic community. And I mentioned advocacy. That is so terribly important, because it's just a step beyond charity, but it is equally important. Advocacy is like the New Zealand government gives about 0.3% of GDP for foreign aid. So we're making representations to members of parliament that should be increased to what the United Nations level should be by X period. But if the ethnic community here who has a stake in that can add their voice to ours, to World Vision's, and we join together and we lobby government to do that, and also World Vision becomes the main focus of advocacy when the government's looking at things to do with overseas aid projects, that they come to us because we have this knowledge and work, and we have the support of the entire ethnic community, if that's what they wish to do. Then I think that advocacy is a hugely important thing. We talked about child labor. HIV/AIDS is another area of advocacy that we have to work as a community. It's beyond nationality. It's beyond ethnicity. HIV/AIDS is such an incredible problem. We've got 15 million children who are orphaned because of HIV/AIDS.
What does the UN want? What are its levels?
Near to 1%. And we just, under the last budget, it was raised. Before that, we were right down in the lower quartile of the world and of developed nations giving. We're getting up towards the middle. But there's a time frame to do this, and unless we really, really ratchet it up, it's going to be very, very hard to achieve. There's always internal politics and budgetary constraints, but if we've made a commitment to certain things with the UN Charter, then we should make that commitment stick. So we don't care about what party we've lobbied, national MPs and Labour MPs and United future MPs, so we just want to see that raised.
Now, finally, what is your appeal to the people as such?
Particularly to the ethnic community and to New Zealand as a whole. I think the ethnic community foremost in that because I'm ambassador to it, and there's things which we can work together, particularly where we have projects in their countries of origin. Are we doing the right thing? Can we do better in your country of origin? Where we don't have a project in your country, what can we do? So they can help us to do better, which is number one. Number two, if they grasp and grab the concept of advocacy and make it a partnership with us, that's wonderful. At the end of the day, if we can save children from poverty, then we've done a wonderful job together. But it has to be with the Pakeha community, Pacific Island Maori community, and now to bring the ethnic. 22% of Auckland are from the Asian community. There's over 100,000 people from the Indian community. We really have to dialogue with them, and they can become part of the wider New Zealand culture by showing off their culture through arts, and because participating in the charity and being citizens of the world, as President Kennedy said.
Coming up next.
We have been enticing foreign investors since the 60s, and we have been quite successful. Our society has, to some extent, been transformed.
Next week.
One of the reasons why Dick Hubbard is no longer mayor and Bruce Huck is no longer deputy mayor is because the public didn't like the way that they'd increased rates by 30% in the 3 years that they were in office.
Up in the Mirror on satellite, cable and terrestrial network.